What's the best way to learn jazz chords and remember them? Learn jazz songs. How insensitive I must have seemed when she told me that she loved me. How. Today we're going to learn line by line all of the chords for How Insensitive, and we're going to learn how to assemble each line and how to play Insensitive. Our first chord is B minor 7. Here you can see the diagram. Here's the name of this chord tells us that the root is B minor 7. The name also tells us that this is a minor type of chord. That means the middle note, or the third, is flat, and we can see that note here. We've seen before that all chords are movable shapes. B minor 7 to E minor 7. Those are all the basics about B minor 7. Let's look at the second chord in How Insensitive. A sharp diminished 7 flat 13. Okay? Don't let the crazy name throw you off. It's not a hard chord. A sharp diminished 7. You'll notice it's an A sharp on the root, okay? And the name tells us then that the root of the chord is A sharp because it's called an A sharp. The name also tells us this is a diminished type of chord, a diminished with a flat 13. Don't worry too much about the flat 13 business. This is called a diminished 7 chord. They're a special kind of chord. In a nutshell, a diminished chord is often used as an intermediate chord to put in between two other chords. This is exactly what's happening in How Insensitive for B minor 7, A sharp diminished 7, A minor 6. And what you'll notice is this creates a stepwise motion. The chords, the bass notes of the chords are moving down. Here, here, here. We've seen before that all chords are movable shapes. What we have to pay attention to is when we're using open voicings like this, then we may have to bar. So if I take this A sharp shape and I take it up to a C, I can do that here like this, but I'm going to have to bar behind sharp diminished 7. If I move it, I'm going to use my middle finger to hold down the A string, and I'm going to bar back here 1 fret behind to get the G and B barred. And there's a C diminished 7 flat 13. Those are all the basics of A sharp diminished 7 flat 13. Our third chord in How Insensitive is A minor 6, okay, which is this. The name tells us that the root of the chord is A, which we're holding down here on the 5th fret of the E string. And this is a special kind of minor chord, a minor 6 chord. It's like a minor 7, but it has a slightly more tense sound. The minor 6 chord is very common in bossa nova, and as with the first two chords, these minor 6 chords are a movable shape. It's a closed chord voicing, so what that means is this voicing doesn't change or need any extra barring when you move it around. A minor 6 to B minor 6. Move it up to B. And that's all you need to know about A minor 6 to get going with it. The fourth chord in How Insensitive is E7 with a G sharp bass. Okay, the name tells us that the root of this chord is E, but this is a slash voicing. So when we have a slash voicing, what that means is the letter after the slash becomes a replacement bass note. Here's E7 with a G sharp bass. Can you guess why we're doing this? Well, what we're doing is we're playing a B minor 7, and then we're playing an A sharp diminished 7, and then we're playing an A minor 6, and then we're playing E7 with a G sharp bass. So our bass notes are going, it's a stepwise bass motion. Stepwise bass motion is common in bossa nova, and it's a very engaging sound. Look, we've looked at those 4 chords. Let's have a quick look at how those 4 chords work together. How insensitive must have seen when she told me that she loved me. And that's line 1. Okay, let's preview line 2. What's the next line in the song? It's this part here. How unmoved and cold I must have seen when she told me so sincerely. The first chord in line 2 of How Insensitive is a G6 chord. The name tells us that the root of this chord is a G, and it's very similar to an ordinary G major, with the exception that we're adding the 6 into it. It's a very, very common sound that you're going to hear in bossa nova. As with all of these chords, this is a movable shape. This is the G6. We slide it up to 7, we get a B6. Same chord shape. Now we're going to look at the second chord in line 2 of How Insensitive. The second chord is a C major 9. C major 9. The name tells us the root of this chord is C, and it's a very common chord voicing. If you look closely, you'll notice that this chord is almost identical to the G6. So what you're going to, and this is something you want to keep in mind, that there's this connection, because it makes it easy to remember the chords. Here's the G6. Here's the C major 9. The movement of bass from the G to the C again is a kind of stepwise motion, although the step is larger, we're moving a fourth instead of just a semitone. This is a very movable shape because it's a closed voicing. We're holding down the middle 4 strings. C major 9 at the 3rd fret. If I slide it up to the 8th fret, F major 9. Same shape. Let's have a look at the 3rd chord in the second line of How Insensitive. C sharp, minor 7, flat 5. This name tells us that the root of this chord is a C sharp, which again continues our stepwise motion. We're going from the C major 9 to the C sharp diminished. It's a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which is also called a half diminished chord. So minor 7 flat 5, a half diminished, a diminished 7. Those are all siblings in the same family of sounds, and you can hear that diminished sound here. It is technically a movable chord. There are lots of easier voicings that you might use for minor 7 flat 5, but this is a lovely voicing to use in this particular case. Let's look at the last of the new chords in How Insensitive in line 2. This is an F sharp 7 plus 5. You'll also see it referred to just as an F sharp plus. And what it is a 7 plus 5 is a 7th chord with an augmented 5. That's this chord here. F sharp 7 plus 5, or F sharp augmented. And it creates a little extra bump in tension. The name tells us the root of this is F sharp. And the name looks fancy, but it's a very, very common dominant chord. We often raise the 5 to increase the anticipation or tension when we're about to resolve to the root note or root chord of the song. And that's exactly what's happening here. I'm telling you that I'm about to go back to B minor 7. And that's what we're doing here. Those are all the new chords in the second line of How Insensitive. Why don't we try playing that whole line and see how it sounds? How unmoved and cold I must have seen when she told me so sincerely. Now I'm just going to put it together. I'm going to play the first line and the second line and try and play along. I'll try not to go too quick. How insensitive I must have seen when she told me that she loved me. How unmoved and cold I must have seen when she told me so sincerely. That's the first half of the structure of the song How Insensitive by Antonio Carlos Jobim. It's quite a lot of material. You've learned about 8 new chords, but you've got a cool vehicle to practice and internalize those chords. Most of those chords are reusable shapes that you're going to reuse frequently. If you're looking for more tips on chords or bossa nova, click on one of the videos that's showing up here on your screen. Come on back and join me again soon for a tutorial on the second half of the structure of How Insensitive.